To this now, the Competition Appeal Court has thrown out the case against all but 5 of the 28 banks that were accused of colluding to fix the rand in the New York foreign exchange market more than a decade ago. The court yesterday dismissed the Competition Commission's 8-year case against 3 of the big SA banks and most of the foreign banks, leaving just the 4 foreign banks whose traders pleaded guilty in 2015 to charges brought by the U.S. Department of Justice. Now, for reaction, Cosatu's Parliamentary Coordinator Matthew Parks joins us on the line now. Matthew, thank you so much for your time. Let's firstly get your reaction as Cosatu on this matter. Now, this is a matter that obviously brought the national condemnation. As Cosatu, you've previously called for, of course, prosecution in terms of those that are found guilty. What's your reaction?
Hi, thank you for having us. Look, we're quite disappointed. We respect the various processes of the judiciary, including the appeal process, but I think we're quite disappointed. Some things don't make sense, and we do encourage the Competition Commission to continue to pursue this matter and to appeal it to the next level of court in the judicial system, Supreme Court and so forth. We think they have a strong case. Yes, the appeal court in this instance found that in some cases they had done some sloppy work, and sure, those things need to be cleaned up, to be fixed. But the fact is that some of the banks have already pled guilty, have paid fines, have cooperated. So there's something there. Many of these banks have been found wanting, not just in the South African judicial system, but in fact in the US Department of Justice, which also investigated it, and hence alerted South Africa's judicial authorities that there is something going wrong here. We think there is space for government, for the Commission to appeal it, to get its ducks in a row, to pursue it, because there has been real consequences, not only to the clients of these banks who are fleeced of their monies, but in fact to South African state, to society, to business at large, who borrow money from banks, South Africa who borrows money from overseas, and of course the impact that's had upon the economy, upon the rand, on public debt, etc., on the ability of the state to provide public services that the nation depends upon, the poor need, the economy relies to operate, etc. So we think, yes, it's a blow, it's disappointing, but it's not the end of the road. We do encourage the Commission to appeal it and to get its ducks in a row and to continue to pursue the matter as well.
In fact, there was hope that those 5 banks that paid admission of guilt would assist in, just implicating other banks that were found wanting. But just your statement on, some of the sloppiness, that could be at play here in this particular matter. The cases were dismissed on the grounds of a lack of evidence, a lack of jurisdiction and overreach. I mean, it leaves a lot to be desired in terms of the ability for the country to handle big cases such as these. I mean, we know that the NPA's first state capture trial ended in a discharge. What does this say about the country's ability to fight against crime? I mean, it did take the Competition Commission 8 years to investigate this particular case.
Yeah. So we appreciate this kind of a case is very, very complex. It's not a simple case of a burglary, etc. It's quite complex. There's a huge amount of institutions, many different individual persons involved, relatively obscure transactions. So it's very incredibly difficult to build the evidence, etc. But I think, having looked at the judgment and so forth, it points to that some simple, basic, elementary mistakes that, reference made to some people having worked at some bank, when in fact they hadn't worked at that bank, etc., etc. So some elementary issues. But we do appreciate the Commission itself doesn't have a huge amount of resources at its disposal, and hence there's really a need for key institutions like the National Prosecuting Authority to also play their part. But I think your point is a critical and a fundamental one, is that when it comes to prosecuting, to getting our ducks in a row, to getting the necessary evidence to win case in the judiciary, the state is often found badly wanting. We've seen, for example, a former mayor of eThekwini being charged, resigning, etc. And yet 5 years or so later down the road, the trial has not even begun, let alone getting to the issue of a conviction or a judgment, etc. I think that for us is quite worrying. We spent a fortune, correctly so, at the Zondo Commission inquiry into state capture and corruption. All the delinquents have been identified. We know who they are. Yet we don't find the NPA moving with speed, the courts moving with speed to expedite the cases, to kind of give a sense of justice to South Africans that indeed justice is going to be dealt with to those who have really robbed the nation. So I think for us it's quite worrying. We just don't see them moving with speed on it. At times, the Commission will make progressive rulings, like originally in court for uniform issues, but because society thinks there won't be any consequences, people simply choose to ignore it. And until we begin to see that the state has got teeth, that people who break the law will go to prison, the assets will be attached, then we're going to continue to be a society where corruption and crime is endemic, where people can get away with impunity, and society is going to pay the consequence for this. So for us, when we get to the budget in February, we do hope governments begin to really increase the amount of resources we give to the NPA, the police, the SIU, the Hawks, etc., to really show that there is muscle behind our commitment to fighting crime and corruption.
And I hear you, Mr. Parks, in terms of your point in just pinpointing some of the challenges that may be at play here in terms of, just investigating such cases, given some of the resource challenges, etc. But one wonders what the long-term implications are. I mean, in January, for instance, in 2025, the Global Anti-Money Laundering Watchdog, the Financial Action Task Force, will review its decision, if you remember, to greylist South Africa and interrogate the public and the private sector measures to address, its concerns. So one wonders then, is this defeat likely to have an impact, and other defeats that we've seen in the past, on the country's ability, to combat money laundering, to combat fraud and other financial crimes?
So we fear it will likely have a negative impact. We feel it will likely delay us being removed from the grey listing process. The grey listing process, I think, is estimated is going to take about 24 months or so, at best case scenario, to be overcome. We have seen some progress, for example, in terms of Parliament passing laws, etc. And the international community will say, fine, we see you passing these progressive laws, but do we see implementing them? And I think that's going to be the critical test. Parliament passed many progressive laws, but when it comes to the departments of the state in implementing them, we are found badly wanting. And of course, I think we also must be realistic. If we're not going to give the state law enforcement agencies the resources they need, then why should we be surprised when they struggle to deliver the mandate we give to them? If we allow, for example, the police service, when we held the World Cup 14 years ago, it had about 208,000 personnel. South Africa's population at that time was about 40 million. Today, we're about 62 million people. Yet the police service has declined from 208,000 to about 172,000. So why should we be surprised when we struggle to bring cases in a court? Why should we be surprised when, on average, it takes about 2 years to get a case to the courts, that we then struggle to deliver justice? So I think for us, unless we're going to begin to be honest with ourselves, put the resources in our state law enforcement, etc., and make some examples out of high-profile criminals, whether they are former politicians, whether they have sat in cabinet, whether they have been CEOs of parastatals or CEOs of companies, unless we begin to see some high-profile fish, irrespective of the color of the political party, T-shirt, going to prison, then of course society is going to say, well, these ones are not serious about corruption and crime. We can continue to misbehave. And the international community will simply say, look, we have other places to invest our money. You guys are still behaving like delinquents. Good luck, and let us know when you're going to get your act together. So ultimately, the ball is in our court as a country. If we want to be serious, and we need to show that we are serious.
Matthew Parks, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. Of course, he is the Cosatu's Parliamentary Coordinator. Just responding there to the Competition Appeals Court having thrown out the case against all but 5 of the 28 banks that were accused of colluding to fix the rand.